Thank you, musicians. This morning, the title is part 3, it Seize the Moment or Miss the Miracle. And I'm always trying to figure a way out, a way to present better as far as my material and preaching. I was telling Stacy a while back, I've been watching videos on how to learn how to preach. And say, why would you do that? Because I want to learn how to preach, and not just be a good preacher, but a good person. But I think every one of us should have the mindset we should always be wanting to grow. No matter what we're doing, we should always want to, you may get better at whatever your field of, whatever you're in. I think you should strive to have a growth mindset. And so I've been trying to think through and just how to, because sometimes I have all these ideas in my sermons and making all these part 1, part 2, part 15, 16, goes on and on and on. So I'm trying to figure a way to capture it all without it going so long. So this morning I'm going to try something I've never tried before, but I'm a gamer. I'm going to try it. And so I'll give you some points, and we'll go through this together. These are my points. This is not out of a book or anything, just my sermon, but I'm trying to put it in a little different order maybe. So we'll see how it goes. Seize the moment. Point 1 is going to be compassion's call. Point 2 is courageous course. And 3 is going to be capturing the moments. First, I want to review last week, if you weren't with us, very quickly. Point 1, we talked about last week. These weren't official points. These are just points in the sermon. The power of what's in your hand. The disciples had no idea that even though the multitude was there and even though the disciples wanted to send them away, in their mind, there was no way the resources were available to help these people. That's what they thought. And sometimes you and I look at things, we say there's no way, we don't have the resources to meet this need. But they were wrong. That was point 1. Point 2 was simple, the doubt to deliverance. Doubt can always cloud our vision. Doubt can cause us to not want to do it. I don't know if I can pull this off. There's no way we can do it. In fact, they told the Lord, you know what, there's no way. We can't do this. But they could do that, but they had no idea they could do it. Doubt got in the way. Number 3 was pretty simple. And I'll continue on this point, and that was compassion. Compassion always finds a way. Compassion finds a way to make something happen. Compassion, and point 3 would be compassion is the door that, through God's miracle working power, they had no idea that if they would line their minds and their hearts to what God is aligned with, something could happen. They didn't think a few fish could take care of this. They had no idea what God could step in and do. And so they were like that, and we're like the same way. We see things, there's no way that this can happen. The problem was not that God couldn't happen. The problem was they lacked what God had, what Jesus had, and I talked about it. And I will continue to talk about it, and that's Jesus had compassion. He said, my heart's desire is to meet the needs of these people's lives, and their heart's desire is to send them away. Now, that is 2 completely different desires. They lack compassion. And that's what I ended with last week. So let me continue on this thing about compassion and willing to take a chance. They could have told the Lord, you know what, the multitude, we can't really feed them. But why not ask the Lord some questions? Why not just say, Jesus, there's no way we can do this, but you say we can feed them? Well, how can we feed them? Tell us how we can pull this off. They're so out of it in that sense, they can't even see any possibility. That's no reason to make that discussion because this is impossible. Living a Christian life ought to be exciting. But I believe this. If you're living a Christian life, you really put yourself on the line. God is always going to want you to grow, to extend, to expand your capacity for caring for others. God always wants to enlarge us. Can you say amen? He wants us to grow to the day we die. And be people who are willing to take a challenge. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm willing to try this. I don't know how we can feed the multitude, Lord, but hey, we're with God. I'm sure something can be figured out here. But they don't even say that. They're not willing to take a chance at all. This illustration I'm going to use is pretty outdated, but I liked what was said in this. I don't think most of you know, unless you're my age or maybe a little older maybe. You remember there's a team I used to watch on TV. Some of you don't know what TV is, right? It's called the Human Pyramid, Carl Walanda. They were called they did this thing called the Human Pyramid, the Flying Walandas. And they would go and they would do these wired acts that were crazy. Let me just read it to you. Some of you may remember the signature act was an amazing living pyramid, 2 men on the wire holding a pole, 3 men above them, 2 men above them, and the very top, all while posed far above the ground on the thinnest wires. No net was underneath. Time and time again, they would pull this off in front of all these people, and there it is. They'd pull it off. It doesn't look like it's a long ways down, but it was a long ways down. I remember watching these people on TV, and I used to like this. It's going to happen. It's just, man, there's no net. Anything can happen. Well, after doing it hundreds of times, something finally did happen. What happened, eventually one day, one of the performers stumbled. The pyramid collapsed, killing 2 of the members. And 2 other members were hurt physically for life. They could no longer perform. Back in their day, they were a big thing. Me telling you the story today, you're like, please, Pastor, come on. But back in that day, it was a big thing. Huge. Everyone knew who they were. Maybe by the name, you said the Wire Act. You say, oh, yeah, I remember them. So 2 die, 2 get physically disabled. So they come and do the Walandas. They came to Carl, and I said, well, what you guys going to do now? He said, after a terrible tragedy, I'm sure you guys are probably just going to call it kind of quits, right? And here's what he said. He said, no, to be on the wire is what life's all about. All of life, all other life is just waiting. He said, to be on the wire is life. And he said, no, we're going to go on and continue to do what we've always done, because that's where we live. And I hope you got it. I was like, none of you got it, what I just said. All that means is they're exciting. If we're not going to do this, what are we going to do? This is our life. This is it. We're not going to stop doing this. Yeah, people died and disabled. Yeah, we're not. This is our life. This is what we do. To be on the wire is life. All else is waiting. And continue to simply say, live until you die. Think about it. I don't know if you remember this quote, or you may know who said it. Life is either a daring adventure or it is nothing at all. Life is either a daring adventure or it's nothing at all. And really, no matter who would say those words, they got something to them, no matter who would ever say them. But the person that actually said it gives more weight to these words, and her name was Helen Keller. Helen Keller was born blind, deaf, and unable to speak. But somehow she found a way out of the darkness into the world around her. Her story, they say, is one of the great miracles of the 20th century. And by the way, I didn't know this, but by the way, Helen Keller was a fervent Christian. They asked Helen Keller, you believe in God, you believe in Jesus, all that. Why would God do this to you? Here's what she said. She says, I don't know why God has done this, but I accept it. And with God's help, I can make the best life out of my life. So let's look at our story here of the disciples. Mark chapter 6, verse 34 again, feeding the multitude. So the usual vast crowd was there, stepped from the boat. The Bible said he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he taught them many things they needed to know. Late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, tell the people to go away to nearby villages and farms and buy themselves some food, for there is nothing here to eat. This is a desolate or wilderness spot, and it's getting late. But Jesus said, no, you feed them. With what, they asked. It would take a fortune to buy food for all this crowd. How much food do you have? He asked. Then he said, go and find out. Let me stop there. First point is compassion's call. Having a heart of compassion. One of the things that happens to you if you ever get really sick, or my incident, this goes to the hospital, everyone that goes to a hospital can't stand the food. I don't know if they call it food, but I don't know what it is. I mean, I was in a nice hospital, but this is years later. Here it is, right? This hospital right here. I'm there one time like 3 days, and next time 4 days or something. And they feed you, and you look at the thing, and you don't even know what it is. Can you tell me what this actually is? Can you describe what this is? Tofu. Who knows what tofu is? No one even knows where it came from. Martians brought it. But no, you say, what is this? You eat it like, Generally, to me, it's tasteless, But when you get hungry enough, that looks good. I got hungry enough by the third or fourth day. I was like, you want 3 meals? Oh yeah, whatever it is, bring it. But you would think the hospitals, they know food offers nutrition, and one of the simplest ways to help someone physically is to give them good nutrition, which hospitals are known for not doing. Makes no sense. Hospitals used to put their patients out in the sun in the morning. The sun would come and bake on them. It helped their body recover. They no longer do that. They were designed that people in the bed would be pushed out in the morning. The sun would rise and bring them back inside. They knew there's benefits of vitamin D in the sun. They don't do that anymore. So what happened in this hospital in Canada? They heard all the complaints about the food in the hospital. So the people that run the hospital, the main bosses, the people that put together that decide what's going to be eaten, they decide to eat the hospital food themselves. For 1 month, that's all they ate. And after 1 month, they said, we need to change the hospital food. That's a true story. So it's amazing how our perspective changes when we simply place ourselves in the circumstance of someone else. All of a sudden, it's a whole new ball game. Now it's you. You're in their shoes. Now you understand. Now you feel what they feel. Now you've been where they've been. It's a whole new world. Talk to someone who's been in a hospital, thought they may die. Talk to another person, same thing. They can relate to each other because they've both been. They understand completely what you're talking about. So think about it. Here it is. The disciples. They're so focused. I mentioned that they're so focused on the problem they don't see the potential. Jesus says, no, I don't want to send them away. I want you guys to feed them. I want you guys to figure this thing out. Feed them. Compassion will find a way. We may not have the answer, but compassion will find a way. Jesus had compassion. So let me continue on this thought about compassion. Sometimes we think the difference between you and God is power. It's not power. The disciples had power. They had performed miracles. The difference between Jesus and the disciples, I said, was real simple. They lacked the compassion that Jesus had. Not one time did the Bible refer to the disciples as being men full of compassion. Not one time you read with the disciple or Peter, any of them say they saw the multitude and they were also moved with compassion like their master. Not one time is that word ever attributed to them. They lack compassion. So here you think about it. Jesus here wants the disciples to be compassionate also, but he wants them to they're going to have to grow. And the way you're going to grow is I need you guys to expand the capacity of those who you care for. Listen, we're not going to send these people away. I want you guys to have the same heart that I have. I have a compassionate heart. I want to feed them. You guys should want to feed them also. But you guys are going to have to expand your capacity for care. You care about yourself getting some food to eat, but you don't care about those. I want to expand this circle of care, the people that you really care for. It ought to include these people. So for a moment, the problem, and I believe this happens to us too, the problem that's before them is too big for them. As a Christian, there will be many times the problem that God puts before our face is too big for us. But in their mind, because it was too big, it was impossible, they dismissed the responsibility. They weren't about to expand their circle of compassion and care. Their answer to the problem was just get rid of them. That's not how you grow. The problem that you put before me, Lord, I can't deal with this, I can't handle this. So just, get it out of here. God said, this thing ain't leaving anywhere. In fact, it's going to stay there for a while. Ask Paul. I asked the Lord to remove this from me 3 times. And he said, no, it ain't going to happen. My grace is sufficient for you. The very thing God put in front of you, we look at as a problem, no way to be solved. And the truth is, because we think we can't solve it, we release ourselves from responsibility. That's exactly what the disciples were doing. I mentioned the word compassion. It means to suffer with, means to endure with, but it's easily missed the real meaning. Because to suffer with and to endure with someone is not just, I feel what you feel, or sympathy or empathy. I feel what you feel, I'm right there. No, compassion takes it one step further. It's wanting to to help the person, whatever their pain they're in, they will do something practically to help them in that situation. That's the difference between compassion. Compassion says, I feel their pain, I feel they're hungry, but we're going to feed them. They're not leaving. We're going to feed them. It's going to do something. Compassion does something. It doesn't just say something, it does something. Right? I have a quote. It implies a deep empathy and understanding for the suffering or the difficulties of others, and a desire to alleviate their pain and provide comfort and support. Compassion involves connecting with others on an emotional level, showing kindness, care, and concern for their well-being. You do something when you're compassionate. Francis Schaeffer said this. He said, biblical orthodoxy without compassion is the ugliest thing in the world. Read it to you again. Biblical orthodoxy without compassion is the ugliest thing in the world. You may have doctrine down, but if that's all you got is doctrine down, that's ain't helping anyone. What's it good for? John says it like this, but if someone who's supposed to be a Christian has money enough to live well and sees a brother in need and won't help him, how can God's love be within him? Little children, let us stop saying we love people. Let us really love them by showing it by our actions. I love them, Pastor. No, you don't. You're not willing to help them. It's interesting because in this verse, it don't tell you to help everyone in the world. It tells you to help the brother who's in front of your eyes that you know has a need. They asked Mother Teresa, you can't help every leprous person in India. You can't cure all of India of leprosy. You can't care for everyone. She said, no, I can't, but I can care for one. So the person or the people you're around that God allows to come into your life, to interweave into your life, or in the church, you have to hear someone talking, and you start talking to them, and they reveal to you a real need in their life. I believe God. That's what God's talking to. There is a real need, and you can help them. Then you ought to. Listen, I'm going to preach this whether you like it or not. You quiet on me like this. I don't know why you were so quiet. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're thinking about the storm coming. Okay, the storm's going to come. I heard that the storm's coming next Wednesday too. And you might as well get ready right now. Like some people, I feel sick, Pastor, next week. It's today. It's not even here. It's not even here. So be away. People. And that's what the Bible says. So it's one thing to say something. And so there's a lot there because if you live well enough to have extra, that means you're a wise person. You know what mercy is? Mercy is giving something to someone who doesn't deserve it. You can't really help someone if you have nothing to help them with. So God does want you to live a life that's blessed, and you're able to pay your bills, and by the grace of God, you have a little extra left over. The Bible says if you have a little extra left over and you have a brother or sister in need, and you know about the need and you won't help them, how can you say God's love's in your heart? He said, you can't. Do you think this would be a good sermon to preach for a revival somewhere? Top 5? Little children, stop us saying we love others. Really love them by showing it by your action. Trust me. What good is it? You got your doctrine down, you got beliefs down, you got everything down perfectly, but you want a finger to help someone. It doesn't work that way. I was trying to come up with an illustration for this. I have some more next week, but I thought about this. If I was in a car, because the pastors have asked me, what happened to you? Can it happen again? I said, they say it can happen any day, any moment. May or may not. Aren't you worried? I said, yeah, I'm worried. I'm concerned, but I'm not worried about it. I can't live like that, right? But if I was in a car and I had a heart issue or maybe a heart attack, or I thought it was a heart attack, I would not want to be in a car driven by a Pharisee. You say, well, why wouldn't you want to be in a car driven by a Pharisee? Because the Pharisee, all he cares about is doing the right thing technically, but not necessarily being right. You tell the Pharisee, hey, bro, I'm having a heart attack. Can you speed up? Nope, don't want to break the law. Don't want to break the law, brother. We're Christians. We go to the Potter's House Church. We live in a Bible. No, well, that's not very compassionate. Going back to our life, we ask God to give us more influence. God, maybe give me more talent. Give me more skills. They're all fine. God, give me a little bit of everything. Maybe just give me the whole total package, whatever you pray for. But really, what God wants to give you more of is compassion. He wants to change who you are at the very core of who you are. That's what God wants to do. The disciples want to send them. The word means to dismiss from any obligation. I want to dismiss my obligation to these people. God says, I want you to feed these people. You know, it's kind of odd because the disciples, the very ones they were laying hands on and healing and praying for, are the very ones that were standing before them. Bro, I'm glad you prayed for them. I'm glad they got healed, but the guy wants a burger. And with that area, for some reason, it's like we missed this whole, we can't connect the dots to that one area. It's like they don't connect. So here are the disciples quickly. You guys are making me go real slow. Like, I only got through 2 pages. I got 12 more to go. So he's, oh no. One thing I've learned, and you probably learned this too about God, working with us, working with you, that God always seems like he puts us in situations, even I say especially in ministry, just living life as a Christian, he puts us in positions that just seem sometimes unreasonable or beyond being able to endure. See, I can't handle this. And that doesn't mean God can't. It seems like that God does that. And so, you know, if you have a vision, whatever your vision is for your life, your ministry, and it's small enough for you to say, yeah, I can handle that, your vision isn't big enough. Your vision ought to be big enough to say, you know, God, unless you step in and help me, this can never happen. I can never live this life you called me, and I can never do what you asked me to do unless you step in and help me. He always wants to expand us. He always wants us to grow and develop. I think that's the reason why some people never grow, because they won't allow God to push them beyond. They won't allow God to move them from their safe place. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians, he says, brothers and sisters, I don't want you to be ignorant about all the problems I had, all the suffering I experienced in the province of Asia. It was so extreme that it was beyond my ability to endure. What's he saying? God put me in this place that was way beyond me. Yeah, it was God at work in his life. Absolutely. God will never put me in a position, Pat, that's going to stretch me. Oh, yes, he will. He'll stretch you. He'll expand you. In fact, he'll put you in a place that you think if God doesn't show up, it ain't going to happen. You so rely upon God to step in and help you. You know, without God's hand on your life, without God moving in you, this is not going to work. And so, you think about the promised land. I'll get to that in a minute. But it ought to be so big, so large, that vision for your life, whatever it is. You say, you know, this overwhelms me. It ought to overwhelm you to the point you say, you know what, unless God steps into my life and helps me, this is not going to happen. Can you allow yourself to ever be put in that position? Where you got it so figured out, so comfortable, where you're at, you're fine, there's no worry, no trouble, no big deal. You probably won't be growing much. You probably won't be changing much. Let me go to point 2, a part of it anyway. I call it courageous course. And I thought about this because it fits to me. The disciples are in the wilderness, and the people of God are in the wilderness. And God tells them When you think about it, God's talking to them. He said, I'm going to give you the promised land. The promised land, unbelievable. Everything you've ever wanted, everything you've ever desired, all you guys ever dreamed for, I'm going to give it to you. And they're so excited about it, but there's only one problem in the promised land. We all know what the problem was. There was what? There was giants in the promised land. And they go and they see giants. You know, God didn't tell them ahead of time there were giants. If you expect God to fill in the blank in the contract, He'll leave a lot of blanks completely blank in your contract with His life, your life and Him. He said, I didn't see that in the fine print. You didn't read. It's right there. The promised land, great, but wait, hold on. Milk and honey, blessing, but there's giants. They're way bigger than us. Life sometimes will be way bigger than you. And it's not just one giant. There's giants in the land. The land is full of these giants. How in the world are we going to go and possess the land? It was a fear of the giants. You know, did you know that fear and excitement light up the same place of your brain? Fear or excitement lights up the same place of your brain. So then, Pastor, what determines if you're fearful or if you're excited? How you relate to it. To Joshua and Caleb, giants, let's bring it on. Let's do this thing. Come on. Everyone else, ain't no way we're doing that. One completely fearful, the other excited about it. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's try. Exact same situation, exact same thing. Both your brain's lit up, but what's moving it is how you interpret it. To them, it's fearful. There ain't no way we can conquer the giants. Joshua and Caleb said, you know what? They don't even know how they're going to pull it off. They said, I don't know how it's going to work out, but we're going to try. God's able. That's all they said, basically. Think about it. Every time God's people went into the promised land was always filled with what? Giants. You know what the word giant means? Giant. A lot larger than you. Why didn't God send them to the promised land full of midgets? I'm serious. I thought, God, what's up with this giants that would just make it easier on everyone? Just have the land full of midgets. Let's say, I don't know, let's say 4 feet 5 inches tall. Now, if you're a midget, I'm not making fun of you, you're a midget. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. If you're a midget, God bless you. God made you small for a reason. Okay? Some of my pastor friends are a little shorter, and I ask them, are you a legal midget? I'm not that small. You know, they're bigger than me. But anyway, I'm just joking. But why not have the land filled with midgets? You know, okay, land's filled with midgets. You go to the promised land. You know what? It wouldn't take any faith. Some of you that are 6 foot, imagine Vince going into the land full of midgets. They'd go, look, Bigfoot is real. Oh my word! Everyone in here feel like, you know, if I have people that are like 4 something, you feel kind of big. You know, you're 5'9". Well, me, I'm 6 foot right now. Just kidding. I'm not 6 foot. No, I'm not 6 foot. But everyone would feel big and strong. Like, yo, what's up? What's up? You want some? You want some? Come get some. You a frog? Leap, baby, leap. I'll give you some. Everyone would be proud. Everyone would be ready to fight. Right? Everyone in here would be, let's go, Pastor. Let's get them. But that's not the case. They're not midgets. They're giants. So I said, no, we ain't getting none. We ain't going anywhere. Come get some. We ain't getting none. So there's fear. Second thing here is we have to embrace the mindset of Joshua. The word means, Lord is my salvation. Caleb means faithful, devoted, and loyal. They're the only two people that no matter what was going on in their minds, is, you know what, we believe that God is able. We believe that we can have faith, the unwavering faith that Joshua and Caleb had. They said, you know what, we don't have an answer. We don't know how it's going to happen. We don't know this. And for them to face giants, it was a whole new experience. It's easy to face things when you face them before over and over again. But to face something large and new, it's a whole new ballgame now. This is large. This is big. Bigger than us. How in the world are we going to pull this off? Well, you know why? The truth was everyone else focused on the giants. They focused on God. The first thing everyone said is, there's giants in the land. Instead of saying, that's the promise God gave. That's the land God gave us. That's what first thing they should have said. It was the opposite. In fact, the other 10 never mentioned it as even being a promise. What you say matters. Joshua and Caleb, they live up to their name. Faithful, strong, loyal, devoted. We got to live up to our name. Our name is what? Christian. This is how people talk in our world. What's that guy's name? His name is Bob. And we always say this. His name is Bob. Why do we say that? Why don't we just say his name is Bob? We say he's a Christian because it's identifying mark. In other words, he's a follower of Jesus Christ. He loves God with all his heart. He's following Jesus Christ. He's not following the world or the culture. He's a follower of Jesus Christ. He lives up to his name. Do you? Do we? What's going to happen as time rolls on here, church? I don't know what's going to happen. But we ought to be people of faith. People of courage. So you know what? I don't know what's always going to go on, but I'm believing God to help us through. No matter what it is, it ain't bigger than God. Joshua and Caleb, it really was their mindset that allowed them to move forward. I'll say it quickly before I end. And that is, after the incidents happened with me, for a little bit, I will admit, in my mind, I was having battles. Big battles. I hop in my truck and I start driving. I think, is something going to happen to me? Then I remember what the words the doctor said, it could happen any moment, any time. They get to you, especially when it actually happened, right? It's different than never happened to you. It happened. So what he's saying is, it's a real possibility. So I'm thinking in my mind, and I'm pretty creative. In my mind, the wrong way. I'm thinking, if I get a wreck, I hit this person, hit that car. I'm thinking, what's going to happen? What am I going to? And that is, you know what? God, if you want to take me home that way, me run a red, and I meet you that way. That's up to you. Or you have someone, not run on a red, just someone hits me or something something happens to me and I wreck and I die. My life's in your hands, God. But this boy ain't staying home. I'm not going to just stay in my house, have my wife take me around everywhere. Why? Because he's disabled. Mentally. Well, I probably, but when you think about it, it's easy to get so caught up in all this. And you start living this life that, come on. And one of the pastors asked me, so then what do you do? How do you do it? What do you do with it? I said, I don't do it, I just live. Just live. Just live your life. Let God use you. Pour your life out to others. Let God use you any way He possibly can. Joshua and Caleb, their mindset was, we can move forward. This is their mindset. It's a mindset of growth. I want to grow. I want to change. I want to develop. I want to become a larger person, a better Christian. Someone that hasn't seen you in 10 years, they walk up to you and say, man, brother, you haven't changed at all. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. You're still as mean-spirited as you've always been, man. You got that crazy attitude. Yeah, you're still the same. Third thing quickly, and that's on this part anyway. I think the greatest giant's the one I just mentioned. That's the giants within. The word giant there literally means tyrant or bully. And so for a moment, I look at the giants as those things within us, like fear, doubt, insecurity, negative thinking, stress, anxiety. Those are all giants in our own mind. And they're big. And they're a bully. Self-doubt, whatever it is, if none of these giants were in the promised land, and just say they're normal people, it wouldn't take much faith to go and take the promised land. There ought to be things that God lays before us as promises that you look at and you say, you know what, I don't know how I can enter the promised land, these giants, but with the grace and the help of God, I can. There ought to be things in your life where it's pushing you. So you know what, I'm doing this. I'm going to do whatever that is. I'm doing this. God's going to help us, babe. Things are going to change, and they will never be the same. That ought to be our attitude. Can you say amen? So here's 3 takeaways. It's usually what I do, I just never say it. Number 1, quickly, you face fear head on. There's no other way to do it. This is what I'm going to do. Hop in the truck, hop in the car, go. Go for a long tour. Do what you're going to do. Live your life. Do your life. Life is on the wire. Second one is embrace a growth mindset. Joshua and Caleb, all they thought about was the possibilities of God. This is what God can do. We're believing God gives a promise. That's the possibilities of God. That's where my mind's going. Right? The third one is you got to learn to tame those tyrants in your own mind. You got to overcome these giants. You say, how do you overcome them? You overcome them by what God said and God's promises. Either we believe God and trust Him, we really do, or we don't. And it's seen by our actions. My actions, you know what, God, I put myself on the line. Here we go. This is what I'm going to do. And these giants that are within, they're still there, but they're not going to rule me. God's promises are going to rule my life. You promised to be with me. I believe you are. You promised to help me. I believe you will. You promised, you heard Pastor preach Thursday, you promised to give me a good future. I believe there is. Let's bow our heads this morning. With every head bowed, every eye closed, please. God's people facing these giants just like you and I facing our own giants. Yeah, they're real and they're fearful. And there's things we too are also called to confront. There's obstacles that seem insurmountable. But by shifting our mindset and embracing faith in dealing with these eternal tyrants or bullies or these giants that want to navigate our life. You say, no, I'm not going to navigate my life. I'm not going to allow these giants, whatever your name is, church, whatever you put for yourself, I'm not going to allow that to dominate me. I am going to, by the grace of God, to reach the promised land with God's help. Because what they found out was the giants are conquerable. Right now, listen carefully. The problems that are occurring in your life, just like the disciples, listen carefully, were problems that they encountered by being simply in the will of God. It wasn't an accident, it was life. Life had brought them to this point. How'd that happen? They were following Jesus. So you're following Jesus and you've been brought to some certain points. You've been brought to where you're at right now. And you have to see it correctly. So, okay, this is, God, you brought us to the wilderness. You brought us to this place. We're following you, and the multitudes are in front of us. These needs are way beyond us. This is something you placed us in. You put us here. And all we've been doing is following you, and you have surely wanted to expand me like never before. God, you are stretching me beyond everything imaginable. God, you're doing. That's God at work. Let Him work. And I wonder how many here this morning somehow you're seeing something you said, Pastor, God was speaking to you. Just raise your hand quickly. I won't go on long. Raise your hand quickly. I see all these hands. Just be honest. Here's my hand. Here's my hand. Here's okay. Here's my hand, God. I'm done playing safe. I'm done staying in safe zone. I'm going all out for you. Nothing's going to stop me. You're going to see me be used by God like you've never seen before, Lord. I'm going to completely make myself available to you and your kingdom, whatever that means, in every sphere you're in. You ought to have a growth mindset. I'm going to grow. I want to develop. I want to change. That's how we ought to think. We live up to the name of a Christian, yes. As the hours go on, the night gets darker. The Christian, he's going to shine. Anybody else, quickly raise your hand. Say, God, you're talking to me about some things. I see these hands. I appreciate your honesty. Maybe you're watching me this morning. You just want to give your life to Christ. Maybe for whatever reason, you're at a place, just, you know what, I'm in the wilderness spiritually. I'm empty, I'm tired, wore out. But this morning, I want to give my life to Jesus, or give my life back to Jesus. I'm asking God to forgive me of my sins. Wash me in your blood. I accept you, Jesus, as my personal Savior. Come into my life again. I believe you died for me and you rose again. And I surrender everything to you, Jesus. My life's yours. Let's all stand in this place. Many, many hands raised. Come and spend some time at the altar before we leave.